The rest of my second year of seminary, following my Hitler experience, was pretty tame in comparison, though I still struggled with certain aspects of seminary. The New Testament biblical exegesis classes I took that year, for instance, frequently left me in tears. But that was because over and over again, I simply couldn't see how it would be possible for me to write about what I considered to be vomity Christian texts in a way that wouldn't offend my professors. Only after calling upon CE for help each time I had a paper to write would my fingers begin clicking their way forward through my written assignments. One time a classmate told me that she wished she could write as well as I did. I couldn't believe it. "How do you do it?" she asked. After thinking for a moment, I said, "Well, the way I do it is that I don't believe I can do it. So that makes me pray for help. And then the help comes and the paper gets written. I've had to pray my way through most of my paper assignments in seminary, so I really can't take credit for anything I've written that you would label as good." Her smile implied that I was being humble, but I wasn't being humble at all. I was only being honest. In addition to praying my way through most of my paper assignments, I also now prayed for anyone who in any way made me feel angry or afraid. I prayed for world leaders. I prayed for rude drivers on the highway. I prayed for any family member who irritated me. I also continued to pray for all the theologically conservative classmates and professors I continued to encounter in my classes. I'm happy to report that my feisty little brain began to feel a little less bothered by traditional conservative Christian beliefs. Soon I began to see that what really mattered was not what came out of a person's mouth, but what sort of actions he or she committed. A student might believe in salvation only through Jesus, but if that student was truly kind in his or her treatment of others, I soon discovered that I was no longer upset by the student's beliefs. What's in a person's heart is all that matters, I concluded. But in order to cleanse my own heart of any residual judgments and fears, any of the black, crusty barnacles that I assumed were attached to me, I continued to pray for any person, corporation, or country that had, even if only mildly, disturbed me in some way. At the end of each day, I would light a candle as I prayed for each individual and entity on my prayer list. It no longer mattered whether the world was divided into truly separate physical pieces, or if everything in the world was simply a manifestation of the larger mind. To pray for an individual or for a corporation or country, I believed, was a way of washing clean some of the dark crust that existed in the world. I took my new job of praying for others very seriously, which is why I carried my stash of prayer candles up with me to Indiana when, after 2 years of part-time seminary coursework, I became a full-time residential student at ESR in order to take advantage of the seminary's writing program. During that year, I expanded my prayer ritual to include individuals who were sick or depressed or in need of some other form of help, job searches, debt, transportation needs, etc. My prayers for others began to feel like the most important spiritual work I had ever done. I loved working as a secret love agent. It reminded me of the work I had done back in college, when the larger mind had directed me towards some individuals who had needed a special friend. Now, if anyone was in any way unkind to me, I figured that individual was simply sending me the telepathic message, "Hey, I'm feeling surrounded by darkness now. I could use a little help." "You've got it," I would silently transmit to the individual, and I would continue to pray for that person for as long as it felt right to do so. I believed so much in the beneficial power of my prayers that one time I confessed to a seminary friend, "I think the only real thing I've ever done in my life is to pray for people." Overall, my year of being on campus at ESR was of great benefit to me. The writing courses, especially, were some of the most helpful classes I had ever taken. Almost immediately, I found myself back at work on the memoir, working towards the completion of my first draft of the project. But I confess that there were times when the religious institutional feel of the seminary began to smother me. Fortunately, I soon discovered a way of combating that campus-wide blanket of religiosity. Weekly trips to a local 100-acre nature preserve, aptly named the Cope Environmental Center. During the middle of the day, I pretty much had the entire preserve to myself, a privilege that I utilized each and every week. Sometimes during my visits to Cope, I would sing to my friends, the trees. Other times I prayed aloud. And always, every single day I visited the nature preserve, one or two turkey vulture friends would join me, flying low over my head whenever I ventured out of the woods into the open fields of the area. A professor once asked, "Shelley, have you found a home church yet here in town?" Although all residential students were required to join a church or Quaker meeting house in the area, since I was still registered as an access student who would only be on campus for the year, I flew beneath the radar of that particular requirement, though some of my professors still hoped that I would eventually land in one of the local places of worship. "Sure," I told him. "I drive out to the Cope Environmental Center at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, and as soon as my feet hit the trails out there, I feel plugged into heaven. In this area, the Cope Environmental Center is my church." Needless to say, that year of being a residential student allowed my professors to get to know me better, and I them. Unfortunately, this meant that some of my professors, disturbed by my brand of outside of organized religion style of mysticism, tried to arrange for me to have a theological review before the faculty. They were bothered by my mystical independence. I think they were hoping to rein me in, but the theological review never occurred. I've always wondered if my professors began to sense that I was eagerly anticipating an opportunity to stand upon my Shelley soapbox in order to preach a message of universalistic tolerance to them. Or, knowing that I was in the middle of writing a spiritual memoir that might eventually include my experiences at ESR, did they conclude that it might be best to leave me alone? Whatever the case, I know that I provided a challenge for many of my professors. More than one professor labeled me as unteachable. Believing that I had nothing to lose, I always spoke frankly to my professors in person and within the electronic classrooms. And if I disagreed with them, I let them know. Perhaps there was a part of me that was literally daring them to kick me out of seminary. Not only would such an action have released me from the sometimes smothering religiosity of seminary, it also would have made my story of having gone to seminary all the more entertaining. I tried as much as possible during all my interactions with professors to come across as strong and unafraid. But the truth was, seminary scared the shit out of me. Throughout most of my seminary career, I felt like a plucked fish from the ocean who had been placed into a fish tank. Surely I was learning valuable lessons, but I didn't like being boxed in by the confines of an educational, religious institution. Consequently, in addition to my weekly visits to the Cope Environmental Center, I developed several means of whistling in the dark. For instance, that year especially, the word fuck became a primary piece of my vocabulary. I was either saying, fuck you, to the source of the inner voice, when it would direct me to take another vomity Christian course, or I was writing fucking bullshit in the margins of my too Christian-y textbooks. Or I was thinking, God, I am so fucked, each time I was assigned yet another paper to write about the Bible, Christian theology, Christian history, or the concepts of Christian pastoral care. Fuck, 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 fuck was the silent mantra I repeated every time I entered the campus building where my preaching the gospel class was taught. There was also a special little song I would sing that incorporated the word fuck. Fuck me, fuck me, fuck me. I am led by the Holy, were the words of a short operatic ditty I sometimes sang in the apartment where I lived while I was a residential student. Sometimes, though, the word fuck escaped through my lips in a more public fashion. According to one of my professors, I was the first student at the Earlham School of Religion who had actually spoken the word fuck aloud in class. I was that particular day relaying the story of a spiritually challenging episode from my younger years, a story I had impishly concluded with, so I was like, holy fuck, God! Twitters of laughter had erupted from a handful of students in the class, and my professor, though visibly shocked, eventually smiled, giving the other remaining students permission to laugh. And that touches upon another manner of whistling in the dark I sometimes used, playing the role of class entertainer. I reasoned that if I could make people laugh, or at the very least smile, on campus or online, they wouldn't be able to see my fear. And if they didn't see my fear, then maybe I could pretend I wasn't afraid. Consequently, my ESR experience, though at times immensely frightening, was seasoned with many truly enjoyable moments. Once I was invited by a fellow seminarian to an energy healing ceremony at an Episcopal church, not too far from campus. Before Father Rick laid his hands upon my head, I told him that I was there to get my butt fixed. After his eyes widened with surprise, I then explained that I had slipped upon the ice and had severely injured my tailbone. I'm happy to report that as he laid his hands on top of my head and prayed aloud, my butt pain instantly disappeared, for which I thanked him heartily. Another time, reading through some of the letters of Martin Luther while doing research for a Christian history paper, Luther's scatological insults to his Catholic enemies made me laugh so hard I almost peed in my pants. And there was the entertaining episode when I pretended to be a religious fanatic, giving a stack of seminary information from the admissions office to a man just off campus who had developed a crush on me. Nothing like a little religious fanaticism to cool the flames of desire. But probably the most fun I ever had that particular year of seminary was after a conservative evangelical Quaker pastor angrily told me that he hoped I would someday come to see the importance of knowing Jesus. Without a moment's thought, I replied, "Actually, I already know Jesus. I was baptized by him." After the minister's eyebrows delightfully drew together in anger, I then quipped, "But that's a story I'll have to save for another time." I was referring to the beach Jesus scenario I had experienced during my first hypnotherapy session at my friend's house many years before. Once I was well away from the minister, no longer able to contain my giggles, I broke into peals of laughter that left me feeling like an impish child who had just played a joke upon her brother. "Thank you, C.E.," I prayed, "for allowing me that bit of fun today. Thank you, thank you, thank you." Though some of my seminary classmates did not appreciate my salty language or the entertaining religiously themed stories I would sometimes tell in class, I shared much laughter with many of my more tolerant classmates who, thankfully for me, had a tremendous sense of humor. Laughter was my way of keeping my head above the water, so to speak. But sometimes the laughter wasn't enough, and I would find myself sinking into a state of despair. "Why am I here?" I would find myself asking. Sometimes I found myself wailing, "God, please deliver me from this bullshit. I can't take it anymore. Please, please give me permission to leave seminary." The permission to leave seminary never came. On and on, the soundless inner voice would arrive, directing me to register for more and more classes, most of them not at all what I would have chosen to take. Hadn't I already made my peace with Christianity? Wasn't I working yet again on my spiritual memoir? Why did I need to remain as a seminary student in the Earlham School of Religion? Once, towards the end of my residential year of seminary, I began to suffer from unusual pains throughout my body. Spanning a 2-week period, quick but occasional stabbing pains began to pop up in various parts of my body and then, just as quickly, would disappear. First, there would be a short-lasting throbbing headache, and I was someone who never got headaches. Next would come an overwhelming pain in my left ear, followed by debilitating hip pain, and after that I would experience uncomfortable spasms up and down my back. None of these pains lasted for more than a few minutes. I assumed, therefore, that my occasional pains were the result of blocked energy in my body. So instead of going to see a doctor, I set up an appointment with a Reiki energy healer in town, not too far from campus. When I first met with the Reiki healer, who was also trained as a massage therapist, I told her I thought I needed an energetic tune-up. After a moment of silence, she began her work, slowly running her hands a few inches above my body as I lay fully clothed upon her massage table. She remained quiet as she worked, but her body wasn't at all quiet. Shortly after she began to run her hands in the air above my body, I was shocked to hear loud, roiling rumbles from her gut. My God, what had she had for lunch that day? Next, she began to burp over and over again, and I became afraid that she might be getting ready to vomit right on top of me. I opened my mouth to inquire about her intestinal state, but before I could speak, she said, "You're probably wondering what's going on in my gut. This is what happens whenever I'm working on someone who's in the process of releasing darkness." Holy crap, I thought. I mentioned the Jewish past life stuff I had been dealing with the year before, but I thought that was all behind me, I said. She said, pausing for a long moment. Then she added, "What I'm receiving intuitively is that for this lifetime, you've decided to do some major soul work. It's like your soul is house cleaning, getting rid of stuff that you don't need anymore." Holy fuck. Did I have more past life memory crap to deal with? Whenever I'm helping to move dark energy out of individuals, the Reiki healer continued, it always causes my gut to become very disturbed, as you can hear. "I'm so sorry," I replied. "I feel horrible that I've had this kind of impact on your body." "Don't worry," she said. "I'll be fine once I'm done." To my great relief, her gut did eventually settle down, and by the time we got to the end of the hour-long Reiki session, her body was completely quiet. My own body's mysterious on-again, off-again pains never returned, so I took that to mean that my soul's house cleaning was done. Thank heavens. After CE prompted me, or so I believed, to register for my fourth and final year of seminary, I was shocked. During the last year of seminary, all seminarians are required to participate in a year of supervised ministry. Supervised ministries made sense for a person who was planning to be a church pastor or a hospital chaplain, but what in the hell was I supposed to do as a sort of supervised ministry project? As I had done in the past, I turned to CE for help. But I was dreading what sort of response I might receive. Was I now wondered, secretly being pushed by this invisible guiding force towards a job I would hate? After clarifying to CE, my handsome Native American symbol for the larger mind, that I would hate to be a hospital chaplain or a church minister, I then braced myself as I waited to receive what exactly the source of the inner voice would propose. I was greatly relieved when, during my silent meditation, the supervised ministry ideas that came to me were all fun-sounding, creative, outside of conventional church, universalistically themed ministry projects. The faculty eventually, perhaps even begrudgingly, gave me its stamp of approval for my outside-the-box supervised ministry projects, and because I was still registered as an access student, I had permission to conduct my year of supervised ministry back home in Lexington. The main theme of my overall ministry for that year would be helping people to discover their connection to each other. Under the supervision of a Christian minister, one of the seminary's requirements, I planned to complete a second draft of my spiritual memoir and to submit a formal book proposal to at least one publisher before the end of the school year. I also planned to teach a semester-long community class in spiritual formation at the public library. Each weekly lesson was channeled, I believe, by CE. And I agreed to sponsor a public community labyrinth walk at a retirement resort in the Lexington area, borrowing the seminary's indoor cloth labyrinth for that event. Although I knew it would be immensely time-consuming, I had also promised the faculty to upload onto YouTube 15 of my spiritually themed songs, which I had written and recorded over the years. Using Apple's iMovie software, which Paul helped me to learn how to use, I converted my songs into mini music videos featuring a screen of rolling lyrics in white font on top of a plain black background. Everything was in place except for my Christian minister supervisor. Initially, one of my liberal Presbyterian minister friends had agreed to act as my weekly supervisor. But in the middle of our very first meeting, she suddenly blurted out, "I can't do this. You have to find someone else." She never would give me an explanation. I could only assume that something about me had freaked her out, because after that meeting, she never wanted to have anything else to do with me. I called and left messages. I emailed her, but she never responded. Holy fuck. Who in the hell would be able to handle me if she hadn't been able to handle me? Doing what I had always done when there did not seem to be a way to move forward, I prayed to the larger mind for help. "Do you know of anyone in the Lexington area," I asked, "who could handle supervising me?" Sitting in meditation, I waited for an answer, and before too long, a face appeared on the inner screen of my mind. "You have got to be kidding," I said. The face that had popped into my mind belonged to a retired Methodist minister that I had known for a few years. "There is no way in hell he'll be able to handle me," I said. "Absolutely no way. He's too conventional. His beliefs are too traditional." But handle me he did, which meant that the larger mind had obviously known more about this gentleman than I did. During our weekly meetings, not only did my incredibly tolerant Methodist minister supervisor and I discuss my preparations for all of my upcoming community events, we also reviewed the chapters of my memoir. I turned in whatever pages of the memoir I had completed for that week. In addition, I gave him the links to all of my YouTube songs. His wife attended my community labyrinth walk, and a friend of his sat in as a student in my community class in spiritual formation, giving him a written assessment of the class after it was finished. All of my supervised ministry activities went very smoothly, thanks in large part, I believed, to CE, my handsome Native American symbol for what I imagined to be the energy of consciousness within all things. I learned a lot from each of my supervised ministry activities, and I confess that I had a lot of fun. But something else occurred that year that was not at all fun. It has taken me a long time to build up the courage to write about this experience because a part of me wants to forget it ever happened. I should have known something was up the summer before my last year of seminary when the half-man, half-elephant face of Ganesh, a Hindu god, kept popping into my mind's inner eye. I had received a brief introduction to this god during my interfaith dialogue class, but I couldn't remember much about him, other than he was that elephant-headed Hindu god. So I Googled elephant-headed Hindu god and discovered that he is considered among Hindus to be that aspect of the divine that helps to remove obstacles. Uh-oh, I remember thinking, what kind of obstacles might be ahead for me? Being an open-minded lass, and assuming that Ganesh was, like Jesus, yet another creation of humanity's collective unconscious, I called out to him one day for help. "Spirit of Ganesh within the human collective unconscious," I said aloud, "I formally call upon you and ask for your help in removing any obstacles that may be before me now. Thank you." Amen. When I look back on this time, it's easy to conclude that I did not receive any help at all from this elephant-headed Hindu face of the divine. But on the other hand, I did survive the experience, so maybe Ganesh helped me after all. All I know for sure is that shortly after the image of the elephant-headed Hindu god began to appear in my mind, I did indeed encounter an obstacle that was quite debilitating. One morning, I found myself in excruciating pain. Both my legs felt as if they were being pulled out of my hip sockets, and immediately I knew that I was re-experiencing the pain from another lifetime. "You are here, not there. You are here, not there," I loudly proclaimed while pounding both my hips with my fists. Soon I discovered that if I walked very briskly in a huge circle around the main floor of my house while pounding my hips, the pain became somewhat lessened. So I continued walking briskly through my kitchen, den, living room, and dining room, back through the kitchen, and round, all the while pounding my hips as hard as I could, continually repeating the words, "You are here, not there. You are here, not there." I was home alone at the time, and as the minutes turned to hours, I began to panic. How much longer would I be able to deal with this pain? On and on I walked through my house. On and on I continued pounding my hips and yelling at myself, "You are here, not there. You are here, not there." I had been struck by this pain sometime during the late morning. It continued, and finally, at about 3 o'clock, I could tell that the pain was beginning to subside. I was so relieved, but since it wasn't completely gone, I continued my brisk walking, my hip pounding, and my mantra, "You are here, not there. You are here, not there." By 3:30, the pain had completely faded away. Worn down from all my walking and hip pounding, I sat down at last to rest. Holy shit! Did I just relive an experience of having been stretched on the rack? And if so, what was the point of reliving so much pain? Hadn't the past life Jewish memory put me through enough already? And why now, when I was involved in teaching a class, setting up my community labyrinth walk, and taking 2 online classes, only one of which, the online supervised ministry class, was actually required? And then I knew what had triggered this past life memory of having been persecuted. It was the damn extra class CE had inwardly nudged me into taking, led by the same professor who had initially pushed for me to have a theological review in front of the entire faculty. I knew this man and I didn't mix well together, and so I had vowed to never take another one of his classes ever again. But then the inner voice had directed me back to this man, to this particular online class he was teaching for the fall term of my last year of seminary. I assumed CE wanted me to make my peace with this particular professor, so I had registered for this class that I didn't even need. But now the professor was putting me through hell. None of my papers met his stringent requirements. I was forced to rewrite each of my papers, which was yet another time-consuming affair and an already busy year. I didn't even need the class to graduate. I could, if I wanted, drop the damn thing. But for the sake of whatever spiritual lesson I assumed CE was trying to teach me, I had not dropped the class. Not yet, at least. Night after night, I had been lighting a candle for this particular professor. Each time as I prayed for him, I would visualize him being cleansed in the Christ stream, and then I would watch in my mind's eye as he was filled with the white glowing light, and I would give thanks for the fact that he was receiving all that he needed at this time. Why? When I had been dutifully praying for my enemy night after night, was I now experiencing such a horrible physical pain? "C.E.," I said aloud, "what in the hell is happening?" No reply came from within. And so I wondered, was this happening because I had made a joke with this particular professor the year before on campus, asking him when the Inquisition was to take place? He had looked physically stung, as if my words had just whipped him, so I quickly responded, "I'm only joking. I'm just wondering when the faculty's theological review of me is going to take place." "Oh," he had said, looking away from me, "they decided it wasn't necessary." Perhaps that might explain why he was torturing me by making me rewrite all my papers. But had I experienced a few hours of physical torture by an invisible rack because I had made that past flippant reference to the Inquisition? Was one of my former selves telling me the Inquisition is no joking matter? Thinking this might be the case, I formally apologized to any past life version of myself that might have been harmed by the Inquisition. But the following morning, at precisely 11:30, the pain returned. Once again, it felt as if both my legs were being pulled out of their sockets. Now I was panicked, on top of being in pain. Was this pain going to return every single damn day of my life? Yet again, I briskly walked through my house, pounding on my hips, saying aloud, "You are here, not there. You are here, not there." Perhaps because I was so panicked, the pain felt worse than it had the day before. "C.E.," I yelled, "I can't take this anymore. It needs to stop. Please help me." Although I didn't receive a verbal response from within, I received an image of myself standing barefoot in the backyard, chanting a mantra, eyes closed, my hands upright, palm to palm, in front of my chest. "What are you asking me to chant?" I asked, and then came the image of the Tibetan banner I had purchased the summer before from a group of visiting Tibetan monks who had performed a sand tray ceremony at nearby Washington and Lee University. I had been drawn to the banner that had been on display at a table of Tibetan products that were for sale. When I had asked the non-English speaking monk who took my money what the symbols on the banner represented, he had handed me a small slip of paper with the typed words and brief description of the Tibetan mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. I had kept the small piece of paper pinned to the back of the banner, which was now hanging in my living room. Retrieving it, I made a beeline to the backyard in my bare feet. I didn't know what the mantra meant or even how to properly pronounce it, but standing on the grass beside our deck, I began to chant as best I could. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. I felt intuitively that intention was more important than pronunciation, and I must have been right because almost instantly, to my great relief, the pain disappeared. But no sooner did I stop chanting, the pain returned. So I started up again. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Again, the pain in my hips disappeared. This time I continued to chant for a full 10 minutes. When I stopped, the pain did not return. until about an hour later, so I went back out to the yard to chant again, barefoot upon the grass, this time for 20 minutes, and the pain stayed away for the rest of the day. It returned the following morning, precisely at 11:30, but this time I went straight to the backyard and began my chanting and did not stop until a half hour had passed. That seemed to be the magical time period because the pain did not return that day or the next. "Thank you, C.E.," I happily proclaimed. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I never had any more stretched on the rack hip pain for the remainder of that semester, and though my professor continued making me rewrite my papers for his class, I survived. When I returned to campus the following January to take the required 2-week intensive Christian ethics, a truly horrible class, I happened to run into my former tormentor on campus. I gave him a big bear hug and happily proclaimed, "We survived each other!" He looked completely shocked by my outburst, but I didn't care. I felt nothing but joy. All was forgiven in my book. I no longer considered him to be my enemy. I really thought the rest of my seminary experience would be easy street. All that remained for my final semester of seminary was my continued work on the memoir, completing 15 music videos of my songs and uploading them onto YouTube, meeting weekly with my supervisor, continuing with the online supervised ministry course, and last but not least, taking the final semester-long comprehensive seminar. This was a course designed to wrap up into a nice little package the foundation that had been built by our seminary experience, and upon which we would soon launch ourselves into various ministries. I still didn't know why the source of the inner voice had steered me through so many semesters of seminary, but at least I could take comfort in the fact that soon all of my challenging Christian educational experience would be behind me. One more semester. "You can do this," I said, looking at myself in the mirror one morning. "You're almost done. Complete the task at hand, and you'll be free." And then, only 2 weeks into my last semester, the excruciating hip pain returned. The only difference was that this time my Tibetan chanting had not worked. How could this be? "C.E.," I yelled. "Help! The chanting isn't working!" Yet again, I found myself walking briskly through the main floor of my home, pounding each hip with my fist as I loudly proclaimed, "You are here, not there! You are here, not there!" I couldn't believe this was happening all over again. "C.E.," I gasped, "this is too much. Why am I being tortured in this way? Please, please, you've got to stop this." The pain did not go away. In addition to being panicked and in a lot of pain, now I was also angry. "C.E., I can't handle this," I yelled. "It's too much. The chanting isn't working. You have to help me. If this pain continues, I swear to you, I'm going to purchase a handgun and put a bullet through my head. I can't deal with this pain, C.E. Do you hear me?" No response. Still pounding my fists on top of each hip, I was frantically telling myself, "You are here, not there. You are here, not there. You are here, not there." This time around, though, it felt as if I were dying, as if the life force were beginning to drain out of my body. "C.E.," I sobbed, "where are you?" And then came an image of a female face upon my mind's inner screen. Although I didn't know her personally, I knew who she was. She was an energy healer. I had visited her website a few months before at the recommendation of a friend. "Oh, Shelley," my friend had said, handing me the energy healer's business card, She reminds me so much of you. You really need to meet her." And so I had visited the website of this female energy healer, but instantly I had felt repulsed by the many examples of her new agey weirdness. At her website were many comments from her past clients thanking her for having cleansed their homes and businesses of spirits. I don't know why this had given me the heebie-jeebies, but for some reason it had. I no longer had the energy healer's business card, but my visit to her website had emblazoned her name upon my memory banks. It would be easy to search for her again online. Even so, I hesitated. Still pounding my hips, I asked aloud, "C.E., isn't there some other way I can be helped?" When the woman's face again flashed upon my mind's inner eye, I went to my computer, marching in place before my desk, in order to keep my hips moving as I looked up the energy healer's contact information online. When I called, she answered on the first ring. As I stood there pounding my hips with my fists, I gave her my name and said that I wanted to set up an appointment. "How convenient," she said in a soft, chipper voice. "Someone just called to cancel her appointment for tomorrow. If you like, I can give that slot to you. Would 2 o'clock tomorrow work?" "Yes," I said, still pounding my hips with my fist. "Great," she said, after getting my phone number. "I'll call this number tomorrow at 2." She lived 3 hours away, just east of Williamsburg. There was no way I could have driven to meet with her in person, not with the pain I was experiencing. Once the pain hit, I wasn't able to do anything except walk briskly through my home and pound my hips with my fists. She had told me, though, that she could just as easily work over the phone as in person. "All I need to hear is the sound of your voice," she had said. "My guides tell me what I need to know once you've stated your name over the phone." Oh my God. She was even weirder than I had initially imagined her to be. Since my body still felt as if it were being stretched on the rack, I went back to my brisk walking through my dining room, kitchen, den, and living room, dining room, kitchen, den, and living room, pounding my hips as I loudly proclaimed, "You are here, not there. You are here, not there. You are here, not there." The pain, as it had done before, did not stop until 3:30 that afternoon. The next morning, my legs began to be pulled out of their sockets precisely at 11:30. But my phone appointment with the energy healer woman wasn't until 2 that afternoon, so I began my brisk walking through the house again, pounding each hip, repeating the same message I had repeated before. "You are here, not there. You are here, not there. You are here, not there." When at last the phone rang at 2 that afternoon, there were tears flowing down my cheeks. I held my old-fashioned landline corded phone between my right shoulder and ear so that my hands could remain available to pound my hips. I was also marching in place since, being on an old-fashioned corded landline phone, I would not be able to continue walking through my house. The energy healer's bright, happy voice chirped in my right ear. "Hi, Shelley. Are you ready?" "Yes," I said, trying my best to sound as normal as possible. "Okay, then. For the sake of my guides, please state your name." "First name or full name?" I asked. "First name, please." This is utter bullshit, I thought, as I dutifully stated my first name. There were probably 1,000,000 Shelleys in this world. How in the hell were her guides ever going to know that it was this particular Shelley who needed help? I continued to march in place, my fists still pounding my hips. "Oh," she said, "I can tell you're in a lot of pain." "Yes," I blurted out. "Well, we'll take care of that, but first I want to address what's going on in your home." My home? Yes, my guides are telling me that you've got an open portal in your basement that's causing some problems. When you've got an open portal, all kinds of spirits can enter. You've got quite a lot of spirit traffic in your home right now. Do I have permission to close that portal? Holy fuck, holy fuck, holy fuck! This woman was batshit crazy. Yes, I said, but all I wanted to do now was to hang up the phone. There wasn't a damn thing wrong with my house. It was my hips that needed help. Okay, then. The portal has been closed, she said. But now I see that there's a spirit attached to you. I'm getting that he might have been an uncle or someone who felt like an uncle. He's an older gentleman. The only time he ever felt happy was when he was around you and your family. I didn't say anything, but I was thinking, holy fuck, holy fuck, holy fuck. And my fists were continuing their constant pounding against my hips. Why in the hell had I called her? Who in the hell was she talking about? I didn't have any uncles who had ever spent much time around me. All of my relatives lived in Georgia. Do I have your permission to send this spirit who's attached to you into the light? She asked. Yes, I said, but by now I really wanted to hang up the phone. I didn't know how much more of this woo-woo weird new age bullshit I could handle. She wasn't helping me at all. Okay, she said. He's been sent into the light. Now we can address what's going on in your body. As I said before, I can sense you're in a lot of pain. Yes, I said, and now I couldn't cover up the fact that I had begun to cry. I don't know how much longer I can stand it, I said. If I walk briskly, the pain is more tolerable, but because I'm on an old-fashioned landline phone right now, I can't walk while I'm talking to you, so the pain has gotten a lot worse since you called me. My guides tell me that your pain is rooted to a past life trauma, she said. That's what I've been assuming, I said. My guides are also telling me that you're in school right now. Is that true? Yes, I said, not wanting to give her any more personal information than was necessary. What I'm getting is that a particular professor this year made you feel persecuted. Yes, I said, remembering all the papers I had had to rewrite the semester before, but now I was also feeling persecuted by my professor in the online comprehensive seminar. No unchurched student that I could tell had ever taken the final comprehensive class. In the course, we were required to write about the church traditions that had shaped our beliefs. How in the hell was I supposed to write about such a thing when it was primarily the inner voice, combined with my visions, that had shaped my personal beliefs? At some point, in response to my protests, our professor, a non-Quaker, had written, "I would rather be dead than be a mystic." She had been joking, but her comment felt as if it had pierced my heart. Then, not willing to claim any single faith tradition as my own, I had been forced to compromise with her by researching the formal beliefs and practices of the 3 Christian faith tradition groups that had helped to shape my personal spiritual journey: the Methodists, the Presbyterians, and the Quakers. In comparison to the rest of my church classmates, I was having to do a heck of a lot more work, and I greatly resented this. But the healer woman wasn't interested in my complaints of what was happening in my online comprehensive seminar. "Shelley," she said, "are you ready to face the source of this pain?" "Yes," I whimpered. "Okay then," she said. "I want you to close your eyes and visualize a string of light connecting you to this particular past life experience that has been the root of the pain you're experiencing." I imagined a small string of light heading away from my body, and she said, "Very good. Keep following that string of light. It's going to lead you to this particular past life trauma. So I imagined myself traveling along the string of light, but it only led me to an immensely black, shapeless blob. I can't go any farther, I said. My way is blocked now by a black blob. That's your past life memory, she said. You are going to have to go inside the black blob now. I tried, but it was as if some kind of a wall were preventing me from going forward. I can't get inside the blob, I said. All I do is bump up against the outside of it. She said. I suppose that may be because a part of you doesn't want to revisit this trauma any more than you already have. Okay then, now I want you to close your eyes and simply tell me what sort of physical sensations are coming to your mind. I did as she told me. I closed my eyes and I tried to feel for any physical sensations other than the still ongoing pain in both my hips. I think that maybe there's rough cloth beneath my fingertips, I said. It's some kind of homespun material, rough wool, brown, I think. Very good, she said. Are there any other sensations that are coming to your mind now? I tried to concentrate, but the only thing that happened was that my mind now filled with a brilliant flash of orange-yellow light, and then it was gone. Just now, I said, I saw a flash of bright orange-yellow in my mind, but then it disappeared. Are there any other sensations? She asked. No, I said, just the black blob before me that I see in my mind's eye, and the tremendous amount of pain I'm in. The pain had not lessened at all. She wasn't helping. I wanted to hang up. This isn't working, C.E., I inwardly prayed. All right, Shelley, she said. I guess you're in too much pain to sense anything else, so I'll go on and say that in this particular life you've remembered, you were burned at the stake, but before that you were tortured. This is a particularly painful life memory because not only did you feel betrayed by God, you also felt betrayed by the church. You see, you were a monk in that lifetime, and while you were being tortured, they kept asking for names. You couldn't stand the pain, so you began giving them names, and then, of course, they tortured everyone you had named. This memory carries a tremendous burden of guilt for you. And with her words came a great flood of tears from me. Oh, my God! Oh, my God! I now remembered my guilt. Why couldn't I have been stronger? Oh, my God! All those people physically harmed because of me. How would I ever be able to forgive myself? Shelley, she said, as I continued to cry, it wasn't your fault. You were being tortured. It was the church that did this. A human being can only stand so much pain. I was still crying. I couldn't respond. She paused a moment, then she asked, Are you ready to release this pain? Yes, I finally managed to say. Good, she said. Now I want you to picture the face of God that you are most comfortable with. My brain froze. Somehow, deep down inside, I now knew that my handsome Native American symbol for CE, the Christ energy, or the light within all things, was no longer the image I needed. I now wanted a symbol that stood for something larger, larger even than what I considered to be the divine energy within all of this world. Subconscious mind, I silently and quickly prayed, I need a new face for God, the God energy that lies outside of this world. And immediately, What came to my mind's inner eye was a clear image of a gigantic woman with long jet black hair, light brown skin, and warm brown eyes that radiated an intense amount of motherly love. When I saw her image, somehow I knew that she was so gigantic that in comparison to a regular human being, she probably would have stood 10 stories tall. Staring into her radiantly nurturing eyes, I also knew that my name for her was Mother. During all this internal experience, I had not said a thing to the energy healer, but as soon as I had the image of Mother firmly planted upon my mind's inner screen, I heard the chipper voice over the phone saying, "Very good, Shelley." How had she known what was going on in my mind? Was it purely coincidence? "Okay now," she said, "picturing your own personal face for the divine, I want you to formally surrender the pain of your past life experience into the hands of God." In my mind's eye, I saw myself placing the black, shapeless blob into a large, open palm of the Mother before me. Silently, I prayed to her, "Mother, please take this from me. I can't handle this pain. I don't want it anymore." I watched then as her palm closed around the black blob, and then ping! Every ounce of pain in my hips instantly disappeared. "Very good, Shelley," said the energy healer. "Now I want you to ask this face of God to bless this past life enemy of yours, the person who was responsible for ordering that you be tortured. Ask that this individual be blessed with all that he needs." I did just that, adding to my silent prayer, "Mother, may your light be manifest within him. May he receive all that he needs to be whole. Thank you. Amen." "Very good," came the chipper voice from the phone. Was this energy healer telepathic? Was she seeing everything in my mind just as I was seeing it? Or was it simply an intuitive hunch on her part, letting her know when I was finished with my prayer? "Well," she said, "I see that we're just about out of time. If you ever feel that pain return, repeat this exercise exactly as you did today." "Thank you," I said. "You're very welcome," she said. "If you ever need my help again, be sure to give me a call." After we hung up, I waited for the pain to return, but it didn't. I waited the next day for the pain to return, but it didn't. Nor did it return the next day or the next. Truly, it appeared that I had been healed. With the help of the woo-woo weird energy healer, and with the help of my new face for the divine, whom I had named Mother, I had disentangled myself from yet another past life trauma. Now, for sure, all the hard stuff was behind me, convinced that at long last my soul's house cleaning was complete. I was immensely thankful. However, I soon came to discover that my energy reserves had been depleted. It was as if I had gone through major surgery. I could barely make it through my days. And now, more than ever, my online comprehensive seminar class felt like total bullshit. What I wanted more than anything was the time to process everything that had happened to me. But instead, I was surrounded by the bullshit of institutional Christianity. I found myself getting more and more angry with the Christian comments of my online Christian classmates. I didn't belong here. I felt for the sake of my soul that I needed to walk away from this institutionalized Christian education. Now I understood why, 2 years before, I had angrily screamed, "Fuck Christianity!" over and over again as I had imagined myself shoving a tree-sized pole up the ass of my symbol for Christianity, the immensely obese king with the large golden crown upon his bald head. I may have been given the help I needed to forgive a long-ago enemy who had been responsible for torturing me in a past life. But could I ever forgive the church, the institution of Christianity, for all of its past atrocities? No, such a thing was surely impossible. Therefore, I was only wasting my time remaining in seminary. Now more than anything, I wanted freedom from the suffocating, confining walls of institutional Christianity. It was time, I decided, to drop out of seminary. "Shelley, you can't drop out of seminary now," Paul said, after I told him I wanted to drop out. "You're only a few weeks from graduation." "You don't understand," I yelled. "Seminary is killing me. It is literally killing me. I have to drop out." By this time, my eyes had begun to fail. They would literally lose their ability to focus while I was in the middle of creating another one of my music videos, trying to work on the second draft of my memoir, writing yet another paper for the comprehensive seminar, or preparing my weekly reports for the online supervised ministry class. Everything on the computer screen would suddenly become a total blur, and I would have to walk away from the computer and spend at least half an hour listening to music with my eyes closed. And then, on top of my waning ability to focus on my computer screen, the skin around each of my eyes turned a brilliant red. I looked like a human raccoon. I couldn't go anywhere in public without wearing gigantic sunglasses in order to cover up my red-rimmed eyes. I thought my face looked about as embarrassing as a face can look, until my lips and the skin surrounding them got severely dry and flaky. Now, in addition to looking like a raccoon, it appeared I also had leprosy of the lips. Nothing I put on my mouth or surrounding skin got rid of the embarrassing white flakes. I went to see a dermatologist and also an allergy doctor, but they could not determine what was causing my severely dry skin. But I knew. It was seminary. Every day, Paul would give me pep talks. "You can do this, Shelley. You're so close to the end. You have to finish. Think of all the time and money you've spent on this degree. You'll have regrets if you drop out now." And so, primarily due to Paul's constant prodding, I continued plodding ahead. By this time, I had also dutifully traveled back to campus to meet with an editor who worked for a Methodist publishing company. She had traveled to the ESR campus in order to meet with those of us in the seminary's writing program who had manuscripts that were close to being finished. Beforehand, she had requested that I send her the first 3 chapters of my manuscript and a copy of my book proposal. When we finally met, she told me that my writing had captivated her. Then she added, "However, this is one of the worst book proposals I think I've ever read." Completely deflated, I asked, "But why does the book proposal matter? You said you liked the first 3 chapters. Isn't that enough?" "This day and age," she said, "you must convince a publisher that your book is marketable. You have to prove that you've done your research, that you've compared your manuscript to similar books that have been published, and then you have to convince us why your book will reach more readers than these other published books. Small publishers can't afford to take any risks now." "But how am I supposed to know such things?" I said. "You're asking me to lie. No one knows how well a book will do once it's published. Even my own book proposal felt too dishonest. I was crying the whole time I wrote it. I felt like I had to sell my soul to the devil just to produce what you read." I could tell. She was exasperated. "I think," she said, "you have a problem when it comes to selling yourself. You need to get over that." "But selling myself feels wrong. I don't want to be a prostitute." She sighed, and then she said, "You might want to consider counseling." I was raging on the inside. How dare she insult my book proposal? It was a perfectly fine book proposal, trimmed of the unnecessary bullshit that I was sure most book proposals contained. Goddamned fucking publishing companies. I left after that, stomping my way back to my car so that I could return home. Crying and cursing for mile after mile, I suddenly realized that what I really needed was chocolate. Pulling off at a gas station, I purchased a large variety of candy bars. Then I chewed my way into the comforting zone of a chocolate high once I was back on the highway. Ah, the pleasure, the absolute pleasure of all that sweet, chocolatey goodness. I was in heaven munching through my bag of chocolate candy bars, and I probably would have remained in heaven if it hadn't dawned on me that I was, deep down inside, actually angry with myself. I was so shocked by this sudden realization that I wrapped up the candy bar that I had just moments before been happily munching, and I placed it on the seat next to me. Oh my God! I may have tried my best with the book proposal, but I knew now that my manuscript pretty much sucked. And it was all because I had not been completely honest. For the sake of my retired Methodist minister supervisor, I had toned down all the Jesus stuff. I had also toned down my bad language, and I had also left out quite a lot of the truly weird experiences of my life. He wouldn't be able to handle it, I had told myself. All those many weeks of writing had been for nothing, and it was too late now to start all over again. Besides, my Methodist minister supervisor probably would not have been able to handle me if I had been completely honest in the writing of my memoir. Now I really wanted to drop out of seminary. What was the point of continuing? My supervisor was still awaiting the final chapters of my manuscript. If I remained in seminary, I would have to complete the manuscript I had. But now that I knew it sucked, I didn't want to finish the thing. I needed to drop out of seminary as soon as possible. But back at home, Paul's response was pretty much the same. "Shelley, for God's sake, you only have 2 more weeks of class. You can do this. Finish what you began." And so, for Paul's sake, I continued my coursework, and I completed my sucky manuscript. And then I uploaded the last of my YouTube video songs, and then, feeling as if I were on my last dying breath, I finished the last of my required student evaluations. Finally, I was finished. A month later, I ran into a friend whose daughter had graduated a few weeks before from Earlham College. "They called your name and I kept waiting for you to cross the stage," she said. "But you never appeared. Where were you?" The Earlham School of Religion seminary students had been the first to receive their diplomas at the beginning of the Earlham College graduation ceremony. And although I had told my advisor, my friends, and also the assistant dean that I would not be able to make it to the graduation ceremony, for some reason they had still called my name during the ceremony. And then they had paused for a few moments because, of course, I wasn't there to walk across the stage. I was home in bed, I said to my friend, sick. And it was true. After turning in my last assignment that term, I had gone to bed and had remained in bed for day after day. Slowly, the red skin around my eyes lightened to pink, and then even the pink began to fade, and the skin around my lips quit flaking, and after about 2 weeks, I was able to focus my eyes again upon my computer screen. But I wanted nothing more to do with my computer or with religion. It felt like my brain had been fried. I was a zombie. All I did was lie in my bed and feel sorry for myself that I had wasted so much time going to seminary. My completed manuscript sucked. I had a meaningless degree, and all those years of working towards making my peace with Christianity had been erased, because now, more than ever, I felt that I hated the Christian institution. I quit going to the Presbyterian contemplative prayer groups I had attended for so many, many years, and every time I came within sight of a Christian church, I literally cringed. These church buildings served as a reminder that I had not made my peace with Christianity, and probably never would, which meant that I was going to be stuck on earth for more and more lifetimes to come. My seminary experience had stripped me down to my dry, angry bones, and now all I could do was lay my weary, angry skeleton upon my bed and wonder why had I ever been stupid enough to follow the leadings of the inner voice. On and on and on, I let my dry skeleton bones stew within the arid winds of my anger. Never once did it occur to me to cry out to the new feminine face of God that had come to me during my phone session with the woo-woo weird energy healer. It was as if I had forgotten all about the gigantic brown-skinned woman I had automatically named Mother. Neither did it ever occur to me to cry out to CE for help. All I wanted was to lie in my bed and wallow in my anger and my despair and my self-pity. Eventually, ESR mailed me my diploma, but the thought of ever going back to the seminary or even visiting its website left me feeling nauseous. The few seminary friends I had were left wondering why I had not been able to return to campus for one last goodbye. Didn't I care about them? Hadn't I wanted to see them one last time? One of them had asked. Not really. I was nothing but dry, angry, weary bones. My heart felt completely dead. I had lost all connection to the energy of the divine. Paul had been wrong, I concluded. I should have dropped out of seminary before the end of my last semester. Maybe then I would have been able to save my inner core spirit. During my first semester of seminary, at the end of my Intro to the Old Testament class, I had been inspired to put words from Psalm 51 to music. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence. Do not take your spirit from me. Do not take your spirit from me. But the way I saw it, the spirit of the divine had been taken from me. I was lost and alone and afraid. I thought I had reached my lowest point ever, and then Paul decided it was time for another big change. After quitting his job at W&L, he flew off to China for a summer of teaching math, and within 2 days of his return from China, he was off to UT Knoxville for a year of teaching and research. While Paul was away, I dipped to a new level of loneliness. Not even nature, which had always been my solace, comforted me anymore. Neither the trees surrounding our meadow nor the Blue Ridge Mountains beyond our meadow lifted my spirits as they had always done before. Even the turkey vultures, who had once routinely flown over our house, seemed to disappear. In Psalm 88 one day, I found what seemed to be an exact description of me. I have been left as dead, like a body lying in a grave. And then Paul announced one day in an email that he was ready for yet another change. He had received a new job offer in Richmond, Virginia. Would I be willing to move to Richmond? He asked. The thought of moving to a new location made me feel as if the soil covering my metaphorical grave had been swept away. So I said yes. Quickly, I found renters for our Rockbridge County home, and we eventually settled into a 100-year-old house in the historic Fan District of Richmond. Although our house was old, I felt rejuvenated by our new neighborhood. We were within walking distance of grocery stores, hardware stores, banks, the public library, several museums, and many restaurants. I became friends with a handful of progressively minded individuals who, like me, wanted nothing more to do with organized religion. I joined a women's book club. I walked each week to a yoga class, and I also began to learn Qigong at a nearby city park. I kept myself so distracted with fun activities that soon my memories of seminary began to fade. I could almost pretend that none of it had ever happened. And then, completely out of the blue, I was invited to attend the talk of a well-known progressive Christian writer. An Episcopal church in our area was sponsoring her lecture. I didn't like the idea of returning to the inside of a church, but I had always loved this particular author. Her feisty, salty language, her quirky sense of humor, her genuine humility, and the energy of authenticity that filled every one of her books that I had read. It didn't matter to me that she was a serious Christian who believed very much in Jesus. Her authenticity was so beautifully real. I didn't care what her beliefs were, and so I decided that it would be worth stepping back into the confines of a church again in order to see in person this woman whom I had always admired. Unfortunately, the friend who had agreed to accompany me to this author's lecture was running late that evening. I fumed as I stood outside the front doors of the Episcopal Church, waiting and waiting, glancing at my watch every minute as I felt my blood pressure rising. Now there would be no seats remaining in the front pews. I would be stuck in a back pew in a large cathedral-sized church, not able to clearly see the face of this female author I so admired. Grumbling on the inside when my friend finally appeared and we were at long last standing inside the front doors of the church, I happened to catch sight of a woman with a name tag. She was motioning to us with her arm. "We have some seats remaining up front," she whispered. Whoa, I thought. How cool is that? My friend and I were led to two seats that were 3 rows back from the front of the church. I couldn't believe it. Now I would have a perfect view. When the guest speaker arrived a few minutes later, I was surprised to see that her clothes were somewhat rumpled, as if she had just gotten off the plane, and maybe she had. Also, her attire wasn't at all churchy. She was dressed in comfortable-looking khaki slacks and a bulky beige sweater. She looked like a woman who had just spent the afternoon sipping tea upon her sofa while reading a good book. I wanted to stand up and cheer. Here she was in one of the well-to-do Episcopal churches of Richmond, Virginia, and yet her attire told everyone that, no matter what, she was simply going to be herself. God, how I loved her authenticity. After the introductions were over and she began to speak, I couldn't help but notice how tired she seemed. Rather than reading from prepared notes, she was trying, or so it appeared, to wing it. But her weariness, from travel I assumed, was preventing her from shining in the way that her words routinely did upon the pages of her books. And then she paused and looked my way for a brief moment. I couldn't tell if she were looking at me or the person behind me. I was the only person in that section of the church with gray hair, so I concluded that maybe my shining silver highlights had caught the glint of the sanctuary ceiling lights. She continued with her talk, and then it happened again. She paused, looking in my direction. I still couldn't tell if her eyes were focused on me or someone close by, but after a brief pause, she continued with her talk. When she paused for a third time looking in my direction, she hesitated for a few moments, and then she said, "Sometimes God gives us difficult books to write." Oh my God, was she talking to me? "It's easy for us to walk away from these projects," she continued, "but we mustn't. We must finish the task God has given us, no matter how difficult it is." Holy fuck! Tears began to form in my eyes. Had she just channeled a message from the divine for me? My heart was pounding. I couldn't believe it. Had I imagined it all? A part of me wanted to jump up and run away. If this author had, in fact, channeled a message specifically for me, then that meant I had to get back to work on the memoir. But that would be so much trouble. I would have to start over again from scratch. And my skills as a writer, I had decided, were greatly limited. But if this author had received a message from the divine for me, I could not ignore such a message. Holy fuck! How would I ever be able to complete such a task? There would be no writing instructors to turn to for help, and no fellow students in writing classes to give me feedback. Completely stunned, I barely said goodbye to my friend at the end of the hour-long lecture. I didn't even want to attend the reception following the talk that would have allowed me to meet one of my favorite authors. Feeling too overwhelmed by what had just happened, all I wanted was to hightail it out of the church as quickly as possible. Holy fuck, I muttered as I drove home that night. Holy fuck, I found myself silently repeating when I went to bed that night. And in the morning when I woke up, I was still repeating as a sort of silent mantra in my mind, holy fuck. On January 1st, 2014, I started this particular version of my little story. And because I knew that I still needed human help for such an overwhelming project, I arranged for 9 individuals to play the role of readers. I figured that if people were expecting finished chapters of my memoir, it would kick my butt into action. And it did. My readers served their purpose very well throughout sections 1 through 9 of this story. But then I hit a wall when I got to the end of part 9. I could feel intuitively that in order to move forward in the story, I would have to journey the rest of the way completely on my own. So I did, feeling immensely brave, I might add. But the way got harder and harder the closer to the end of my story I got. Even my health began to suffer. Slowly, due to severe inflammation in my left knee that was eventually diagnosed as Lyme disease, I was beginning to lose my ability to walk without the aid of crutches. To make matters worse, the couple who had been renting our Rockbridge County home lost their jobs and had to move away. And then, shortly after Paul accepted a new job at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, I noticed that squirrels had begun nibbling on the red cedar siding of our now empty Rockbridge County house. Rather than find new renters, I decided that it was time for me to move back to our old home in order to do battle with the squirrels. But I also felt intuitively that being back in our beautiful meadow would have a healing impact upon my body. We rented our Richmond place to our son Austin and his new wife. Meanwhile, Paul found a small apartment to rent in Charlottesville, about an hour's drive from Lexington, coming home only on the weekends. All of our pets by this time were gone. So when Paul wasn't at home, I had the house completely to myself. That meant I had a lot of time to focus on healing my inflamed left knee. I also now had plenty of time to work on the memoir. After a few months of living mostly alone, working on the memoir bit by bit every weekday, I began waking up in the middle of the night to discover at the foot of my bed the black, shadowy form of a man. The first time this occurred, I thought someone had actually broken into our home. I was scared shitless, but to my surprise, what erupted from my lips, as if my mouth were on autopilot, were the words to the prayer I had silently recited while watching Hitler's propaganda film during my interfaith dialogue class in seminary. This time, however, I spoke the words aloud. With the power of the living Christ within me, I bless the living Christ within thee. With the power of the living Christ within me, I bless the living Christ within thee. With the power of the living Christ within me, I bless the living Christ within thee. Slowly, as I prayed the words aloud, the shadow image of the man before me began to fade. I had to repeat this same prayer when the nighttime shadow image of the man appeared at the foot of my bed on 2 other occasions. And then one night, I had a dream that I believe identified who this shadow image was. In the dream, I saw once again the handsome Native American man who had once been my symbol for the Christ energy, the light within all things. Only now, I could see that he was a spiritually broken man. His hair, which looked as if it had been hacked off with a knife, was now only chin length, and he was wearing ill-fitting clothing, a bulky coat that swallowed his shoulders, pants that were far too short, worn-looking shoes with no socks. He was sitting bareback upon a white and brown pinto pony in our backyard. Somehow, within this dream, I knew as I stared at this man from the window of my bedroom that he was me, an old, past life version of myself. And then it came to me that I, had been the father of the Native American toddler whose image within my mind's eye many years before had so repulsed me. I also knew as I looked into his eyes that in that lifetime I had borne a tremendous amount of guilt and remorse over what had happened. My own lust for killing my enemy, the Christian white man, had prevented me from protecting my family. If I had been with them, I would have been able to fight for them or to lead them to a place of safety. Instead, I had been busy killing my enemy. I had been completely obsessed with killing the white man back in those days. The white man was, I believed, a scourge upon the earth. He needed to be eradicated. I was on the side of good. The white man and his Christian church were on the side of evil. Therefore, my killing sprees had been justified, or so I had thought, before the day I came home to discover that my wife and daughter and other members of my tribe had been murdered. It was the rotting black body of my young toddler-aged daughter who had paralyzed me with debilitating grief and guilt. I had never recovered from the image of her. I had wanted to die, but instead I began to drink. I had tried as hard as I could to erase her image from my memory with alcohol. I knew all this as I stared at the broken man before me, but I also knew that it was time for me to say goodbye to this old image of myself. "You may leave now," I said. And then I realized that this man before me, this old version of myself, had been the source of the inner voice I had been receiving all my life. He had been my guide and my teacher. He had not wanted me to make the same mistakes he had made, which explained the message, "The only reason you are here is to love." And also the message I had received at the local Quaker meeting, "God is love, the devil is fear. Those who act out of fear are the only true devil worshippers of this world." He was also the one, I believed, who had taught me how to pray for my enemies, including even Hitler. He was the one I believed who had led me to the energy healer, who had helped me to release to a higher power the guilt I had carried from a long ago past life as a monk. And now this knowledge about a third past life had come to me, this time within this most vivid of dreams, a lucid dream. Even within the dream, I knew that I was dreaming. 3 memories of past life traumas had come to me since I had first gone to seminary. Each memory had been rooted in guilt, a guilt that I had not been able to prevent bad stuff from happening to the people I had loved. And now I knew, thanks to my former Native American self, that it was time to release my guilt from his life as well. I knew that it had not been his or my fault that my wife and child had been killed, but at the same time I also knew that it was wrong to hate others and to seek revenge against an enemy, no matter what that enemy had done. One could not be free, I now realized, if one continued to hold on to guilt and fear and anger. Within my dream, I knew that it was time for me to move on. It was time for me to release the past. My former Native American self had been, I believed, my inner warrior. I didn't need that aspect of myself anymore, not if I was ready to move forward. "You may leave now," I said. And I watched as my former Native American self began to fade away. Still dreaming, knowing that I was dreaming, I returned to my bed, and then to my great surprise, my former self was back. Only this time I could feel him inside my body, traveling up as an energy stream from the soles of my feet to my calves, up to my thighs. Suddenly I was very afraid. What was he doing? I had just released him. Why was he now inside me? Up, 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 his energy continued to creep to my stomach, to my chest, up to my shoulders. And when his energy reached the level of my throat, I found myself loudly proclaiming, "I love you! I love you! I love you!" That was the moment I woke up. I wish I could say that I've made my peace with the institution of Christianity, but I know for a fact that I haven't. Not too long ago, I was invited to attend a Methodist contemplative prayer service, and because I felt that my heart was prompting me to attend this service, I went. Later, sitting for the hour of contemplative silence in a circle of chairs at the front of a Methodist church sanctuary, I was suddenly and unexpectedly overwhelmed by a gigantic outburst of anger. I realized immediately that it was the same rage I had felt when I had first imagined myself shoving a tree-sized pole up the ass of my naked, obese king symbol for Christianity. Why, after all this time, did I still feel so much hatred for the church? And then the answer came to me, though not in the form of soundless words. It was a simple inner knowing, the inner knowing that long, long ago, perhaps in that lifetime as a monk, or perhaps in other lifetimes that I don't even remember, I had believed in the church with all my heart. Long ago, long before I was a Native American man, long before I was a Jewish mother, I had perceived the church as an institution of God, sharing, promoting, and spreading God's love in the world, making the world a better place. And then I had discovered in that life as a monk that I was wrong. It was, I now realized, my disappointment in the church that had given birth to the root of my hatred for the church. I wanted to keep hating it, and yet I could feel deep within my innermost core that I was being asked to forgive and even to love the church. "No," I inwardly screamed, and then the tears came. "This isn't fair," I silently prayed, to no one in particular. I couldn't believe that I was sitting in the front of a Methodist church sanctuary, crying now, because I still hated the church, and I wanted to continue hating it, simply because I thought it deserved to be hated for all the fear and divisions it had promoted in our world. On and on I cried, and then, growing weary and self-conscious of my public display of tears, I envisioned my gigantic mother image of God, and I addressed her. Only this time, I didn't call her mother. This time, I called her Mother Within, because I very much wanted to believe that some part of her was alive within me. "Mother Within," I prayed, How does one go about learning to love an institution? And then I saw within my mind's eye the image of the mother, and within the open palms of her gigantic motherly hands, I saw my old symbol for the Christian church, the fat king with his large golden crown and his rich, velvety red, fur-lined robe. I took that to mean that I needed to surrender this fat, kingly symbol for the church to her. So I did that. Mother within, I prayed, I surrender the church to you. I ask that you love the church into wholeness. May it come to be rooted in your light of love, and may this light be manifest within Christianity in a way that is for the highest good for all. I ask this in the name of love. Thank you, Mother. Amen. That was the moment a new thought popped into my mind. Finish the memoir and release it. And so I have. Perhaps by releasing this story, I will move a little closer to making my peace with Christianity. I am hopeful that I will eventually release my old hatred of the church. The reason for my hope? Yet another vision I received back when my children were in elementary school. Many years ago, while waiting in the school parking lot to pick up my children from school, I saw within my mind's eye a tall black woman with deep, piercing eyes. Looking into her brown eyes, which were staring directly at me, I began to cry. I knew even then that the reason I was crying was that her beauty, rooted in the power of her own fearless, unique authenticity, had pierced my heart. Looking into her beautiful eyes, I could see that she knew fully and completely who she was. And as I continued to gaze upon her beauty, I also knew that her voice carried the power to touch and transform the hearts of others by connecting them to the love which is their birthright. Lately, as I've gotten closer and closer to the end of my memoir project, the image of this beautiful black woman has been appearing more and more frequently upon the inner screen of my mind. I will never be able to prove such a thing, but I believe this woman is my future self, yet another manifestation of my soul. If I am correct, then she is my daughter and also my mother. She is my daughter because she would not be who she is without my life experiences. She is my mother because she is far more advanced than I am. She, unlike me, is without fear and anger and hatred. She, unlike me, is the embodiment of love. I see her face now in my mind's inner eye, and again there are tears in my eyes. She, above all else, is my true hope. She is who I yearn to become.